The sun struggles to pierce the high courthouse windows, scattering slivers of light across the polished oak floor. The air smells faintly of old leather, ink, and that unique tension only a courtroom packed with family drama can produce. Kody sits rigidly at the center of it all, his fingers drumming out a nervous rhythm on the wooden table, though his face maintains a carefully constructed mask of composure. He was, outwardly, the calm in the eye of a hurricane, but inside, the hurricane had already brewed. Across from him, Meri shifts in her seat, adjusting the microphone in front of her. Her fingers curl and uncurl, betraying the tension she's fighting to suppress. Her eyes lock on the judge, not wavering once, and there is a steeliness to her stance that contrasts with the tremble in her voice. She knows that every word she utters now carries the weight of years of secrets, betrayals, and unspoken grievances. Christine and Robyn sit nearby, both rigid and focused. Christine's sharp eyes dart from Kody to Meri, a silent warning in her gaze. Robyn, though pale and visibly anxious, is determined not to appear vulnerable in front of everyone. Janelle, the last of the group, clutches her folder like a lifeline, her hands betraying a subtle shake. She casts furtive glances around the courtroom, bracing herself for the inevitable emotional collision. The judge, a stern woman with piercing eyes and an unflinching presence, lightly taps her gavel. We're here today to review all claims presented regarding family assets, custody arrangements, and any other pertinent matters. I expect full honesty and cooperation from all parties, she says, her voice calm, yet commanding. The room seems to shrink under her gaze. Every whisper, every shuffle of papers feels amplified, magnified by the tension. Meri takes a deep breath and exhales softly and slowly. Then, in a voice that begins almost hesitant, but grows steadier by the second, she begins an account of things that have been hidden from the world for so long. Your Honor, she starts, her voice shaking. There are truths here that have been hidden, truths that Kody has not shared with any of us. The courtroom, already tense, falls into an almost tangible silence. All eyes are on her. Even the air seems to pause, waiting for the storm she's about to unleash. She tells of conversations that seemed casual at first, but in hindsight, carried the weight of hidden intentions. She recounts late-night discussions that were never meant to be overheard, financial arrangements kept in secrecy, and subtle manipulations that gradually eroded trust among the wives. With each sentence, the subtle tension in the room grows heavier. Kody remains outwardly calm, but the tight clenching of his fists and the faint twitch at the corner of his eye betray the storm inside. Robyn leans slightly forward, her expression masking a flinch at certain revelations. Christine's eyes narrow, assessing each word with the precision of someone who has always suspected there was more beneath the surface. And Janelle, as always, feels caught between loyalty, confusion, and growing apprehension, her hands gripping her folder as if it could anchor her to stability. As Meri continues, she begins to outline the financial discrepancies that had gone unnoticed by most of the family. Each example she provides paints Kody in a complicated light, not merely as a leader trying to protect his family, but as someone who may have taken liberties at the expense of trust. The courtroom seems to lean in, collectively holding its breath as each piece of evidence unfurls. The subtle sound of pens, scratching notes, the soft murmur of the stenographer, the slight shift of the wives in their seats. Every detail adds to the electric atmosphere. Then comes the first testimony. A former family friend, someone who has been quietly observing and recording the family dynamics for years, is called to the stand. They speak in a soft, hesitant tone at first, but as their narrative unfolds, so does the confidence. They speak of favoritism, secret conversations, and whispered promises that up until now had been dismissed as gossip. Every word spoken feels like a strike of lightning in the courtroom. Kody's jaw tightens, a minute bead of sweat forming at his temple. Robyn's lips part slightly, but she doesn't speak too much betrayal, it seems, too early. Christine leans back with a short, sharp laugh, a mixture of disbelief and vindication. Janelle looks down at her hands, trying to hide the tremor that threatens to betray her. The tone shifts as the judge interrupts to request clarification on some of the financial documents. Kody hesitates. He flips through papers with that mechanical precision of one who knows one wrong move could mean disaster. For one split second, his composed exterior wavers, and that, it seems, is all it takes. Subtle tension curls around every observer in the room, like smoke warning of an impending fire. Then comes a confrontation that has been simmering beneath the surface. Meri, having meticulously laid the groundwork, locks eyes with Robyn. "You knew about this, didn't you?" she whispers, her voice barely audible but cutting through the room like a knife. Robyn flinches, her eyes dropping to the floor. Her silence says more than words ever could. Christine lets out a sharp, almost cynical chuckle, and the hushed murmurs of the courtroom grow louder. The unspoken tensions among the wives, and between Kody and each of them, begin to surface, like cracks in a dam, ready to burst. As the session continues, Kody finally speaks, attempting to regain control. "I did what I thought was best for everyone," he says, his tone measured but unconvincing. The room is quiet, the judge's piercing gaze weighing on every word. The air between the people seems almost suffocating, thick with tension and expectation. Every witness testimony, every word, every gesture seems to add another layer of combustible pressure. The session veers wildly from dramatic testimony to intimate confessions. The former family friend returns to provide more detail, recounting moments of secret planning, hidden motivations, and decisions that would affect this family in ways no one outside the family could ever imagine. Each revelation lands like another hammer strike. The wives react differently. Robyn's composure cracks, and a few tears escape. Christine's face tightens as the strategic mind calculates the implications, and Janelle's anxiety grows, her lips pressed in a thin line as she counts the seconds in silence until this storm passes. By this time, the courtroom all but seems to shrink. The walls are pressing in. The air hums with unwritten tension spurred by years of secrets, finally coming out. Then, just as it would seem the session was closing down, the judge gestured to the clerk, who quietly handed her an envelope. Everybody leans forward instinctively. And what's inside? A letter with a revelation so explosive, so unexpected, that the next session will have everyone questioning everything they thought they knew about this family. The gavel strikes not as a finish, but as a pause, a heartbeat, before the storm continues on. The wives look sideways at each other with an unspoken understanding. Nothing will ever be the same after this. Kody stares ahead, his mask of control slipping ever so slightly. The judge's eyes scan the room, measuring every reaction, every twitch, every flush of emotion. Outside, the sunlight is dipping further, casting long shadows that seem to mirror the darkness settling over this fractured family. The courthouse feels different today. The sun through the tall windows seems more stark, slicing across the waxed floors like a knife edge. The air is thick with expectation, as if every movement, each rustling of papers, every soft inhalation of breath, is magnified by the silent tension hanging in the air. Kody sits at the head of the table, his hands folded, attempting to continue with the calm demeanor that had worked for him over the years. Even from across the room, though, it's easily possible to perceive the tension in the tightness of his jawline, the flutter of doubt in his eyes. The envelope from the previous session sits before the judge. She opens it slowly, with care, as if every second might hold a revelation capable of knocking everything down in its path. The room leans forward as a whole, with each person sensing that what comes next will change the course of the entire case and maybe the whole family dynamic. Insider documents, letters, and emails, proof of secret arrangements and agreements Kody made without his wife's knowledge or consent. Christine, seated to the side, lets out a quiet, disbelieving laugh, almost a scoff. "I knew it," she mutters under her breath as her eyes scan through the pages, as though the more she read, the more satisfaction she could draw from long-suspected truths finally surfacing. Robyn's hands tremble slightly, hidden under the table, as she fights the urge to cry or shout. Her face is pale, almost ghostly, and yet there is fire in her eyes, resolution to comprehend, to argue back, to defend herself and her place in a family now standing on the edge. Janelle, always the observer, purses her lips and holds onto her folder tightly, whitening her knuckles. Every subtle movement reveals her inner turmoil, loyalty, fear, confusion. The judge's voice cuts through the silent tension. We shall now go through in minute detail the contents of this envelope. I want full cooperation from everyone. The tone is commanding, with a hint of an underlying tension that is reflected by all present. Meri rises, her voice steady now, full of both the fear of the unknown and the empowerment of finally speaking truth. Your Honor, the documents show actions that were deliberately hidden from all of us, she says, sliding one of the letters toward the judge, making sure every eye in the room can see it. The room goes almost unnaturally quiet. Even Kody, always so composed, shifts slightly in his chair. His fingers fidget against the table, a minuscule crack in his carefully constructed armor. Testimony begins, and with it, a former family confidant, a person who for years had silently watched the inside dynamics of the family, takes the stand. Their voice is soft at first, almost hesitant. But as they start to recount secret agreements, alliances, and hushed conversations, it grows firmer. They describe instances when Kody acted unilaterally in decisions involving family resources and personal arrangements without consulting his wives. Each example lands like a blow, reverberating around the courtroom. Robyn shifts uncomfortably. Christine leans in slightly, calculating in her mind, while Janelle's fingers tighten on her folder. Meri, emboldened by the witness, turns her attention toward Robyn. "You were aware of some of these dealings, weren't you?" she asks, her voice a careful balance of accusation and controlled fury. Robyn's lips part slightly, but no words escape. The silence is deafening. Christine's expression hardened, a subtle knowing smirk crossing her lips. Janelle looked down, trying to center herself on the papers before her, wishing she could escape the emotional weight of what was unfolding. Kody finally speaks up, his voice measured, but tinged with defensiveness. "I acted in what I believed was the best interest of the family," he says. His eyes flick to each of his wives in turn, as he tries to gauge their reactions. But it's clear that trust has already begun to crack. The room switches between waves of testimony and personal, confronting moments. Robyn gets up, her voice shaking as she continues with her account of the secret dealings. Her words, laced with fear, betrayal, and pain, find their mark in the courtroom. Christine suddenly cuts in, arguing against Robyn's claim and highlighting inconsistencies in Kody's versions. Meri, now composed but resilient, reveals further evidence, emails, financial statements, and statements of conversations that support her claims. Janelle listens, while she silently fights an inner battle to make sense of it all. The air thickens as the tension between them escalates. Alliances that had seemed so strong begin to shift in subtle ways. Christine bends closer to Meri, whispering something under her breath, while Robyn's hands start shaking clutching the edges of the table, and Kody's composure falters. The very first fissures in his armor can now finally be seen by all, including himself. The judge asks that some set of documents be explained, and fumbling, Kody reaches for them, the weight of scrutiny bearing down on him. Outside, the world is oblivious to the storm that is brewing inside the courtroom. Inside, the tension is almost suffocatingly thick with emotion, suspicion, and unspoken accusations. With each revelation building upon the last, the audience is thus left imagining the scene if it were to unfold on the screen. Palpable energy, anticipation, fear, and mounting chaos. Then comes the emotional turning point. Robyn, voice wavering but resolute, confronts Kody directly. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asks, tears forming in her eyes. Her words hang in the air, a delicate yet piercing challenge that resonates with everyone in the room. Kody shifts uncomfortably, glancing at each of his wives in turn, unable to meet their eyes fully. The tension between them crackles like static electricity. Meri steps forward, taking control of the emotional momentum. "The truth matters more than comfort," she says, her voice steady and compelling. She outlines a series of events that uncovers Kody's unilateral decisions, financial manipulations, personal alliances, and actions taken without consent or transparency. Christine leans back, arms crossed, expression mingling satisfaction with calculation. Robyn cries softly, her shoulders shaking, while Janelle's hands remain tight on her folder, silent but visibly strained. The former confidant returns to give further testimony, recounting private conversations, hidden alliances, and subtle manipulations that for years had gone unnoticed. The courtroom listens in rapt silence, hanging on every word. Kody's defenses grow more fragile with each revelation, and the room seems almost to vibrate with the tension of unspoken accusations. The emotional weight of the session is heavy. Each wife reacts differently, from quiet tears to hard stares and whispered mutterings. By the time the session draws to a close, the air is thick with suspense. The judge readies himself to recess, but stops short, indicating the envelope of new evidence will play in the next session. The wives exchange looks. Shock, fear, determination, and even subtle relief flicker across their faces. Kody leans back in his chair, his mask of control showing clear cracks. The tension is far from over. The courtroom feels smaller today. Sunlight streams through the tall windows, catching the shiny wood floor in long, sharp lines, but it fails to warm the room. Instead, it highlights the tension that seems to wrap itself around everyone like a suffocating cloak. The air feels heavy, laced with anxiety, unspoken accusations, and that faint scent of polished wood mixed with nervous perspiration. Kody sits at the head of the table, trying to project calm. His hands rest on the table, fingers entwined, but his jaw is set tight, his eyes betraying the storm inside. Across from him, Meri sits upright, her back straight, her gaze unwavering. She has found her rhythm now, her voice steady, but her heart races like a drum in her chest. Each word she has spoken and will speak has held within it the weight of years of suppressed emotions, secrets, and quiet betrayals. Christine sits next to her, arms crossed, with every muscle in her body taut and ready to pounce. Robyn is pale, her eyes glistening with the threat of imminent tears, though she tries to keep her composure. Janelle, ever the observer, holds onto her folder tightly, knuckles white, and watches with a mix of fear and anticipation. This is a serious, authoritative woman who leans forward and rests her hands on the desk. We shall now proceed to hear further testimonies and confessions for or against the claims made in this case, she says aloud. The voice cuts the thick tension, commanding attention, but still not breaking the heaviness that had just fallen in that room. The first witness is called forward, an old family confidant. They are clearly nervous. Their hands shake while clutching the edges of the podium. But as they start to speak, recounting private conversations, hidden alliances, and moments of manipulation, their voice grows firm. The courtroom leans in, transfixed by the revelations. Every word is pointed, well placed, and cuts through the painstakingly kept veneer of the family. The witness recounts moments of Kody acting in secret, making unilateral decisions about finances and family dynamics. She describes whispered conversations that no one else was meant to hear, subtle manipulations, and alliances formed in secrecy. What the evidence does paint is complicated, not only betrayal, but strategy, fear, and control. Robyn squirms uncomfortably, her tears threatening to spill. Christine narrows her eyes, analyzing every word for hidden implications. Janelle presses her lips together, willing herself silently to stay grounded in the middle of the emotional storm. Meri gets up and walks towards the stand, her voice even but firm. "These are not just stories," she says. "This is proof, evidence that shows how decisions had been made without our knowledge or consent. Decisions which affected each one of us in ways we didn't even realize at the time." She submits documents, letters, and messages that corroborate the testimony from the witness, and the room holds its collective breath. Even Kody shifts in his seat, the confident mask finally cracking. The tension mounts until Robyn, no longer able to hold back, rises to speak. Her voice is shaking, but beneath the shaking lies a determinism. "I trusted him," she whispers, voice breaking, "and I believed in what he told me. Now I see the truth about secrets, lies, and hidden deals, changing everything without our consent." Her tears fall unashamed now, and the room is silent, except for the soft sound of them hitting the polished floor. Christine watches silently, her face sharp, calculating in the exact weight of Robyn's words. Finally, Kody speaks, his voice subdued, defensive. "I did what I thought was best for the family," he says, eyes nervously darting between each wife. His tone, previously firm, is now laced with a hint of guilt, and there's a slight shake in his voice, a break in the armor he has maintained for years. Meri immediately jumps into her response, and her words are concise, like a scalpel cutting through the air. "Best for the family," she asks, "or best for yourself?" The emotional intensity in the courtroom increases. Each wife reacts differently. Christine leans back, crossing her arms, observing. Robyn sobs quietly, overcome by feelings of betrayal and heartbreak. Janelle looks at the judge, hoping for a resolution that now seems ever more elusive. Meri's eyes burn with determination and pain, her voice unshaken, as she continues to expose hidden truths. The room seems to live and breathe tension. The emotional currents twist and tangle around all who are there. Now the former confidant goes back on the stand, relating even more sensitive details, financial manipulations, emotional coercion, and moments when Kody's unilateral decisions led to serious consequences for the wives. Each revelation was followed by gasps, whispered comments, and the occasional tear. A courtroom became a house of cards, delicately balanced between accusation, defensiveness, and bare emotion. Kody's calm demeanor was almost gone. His responses grew measured and cautious, revealing the first large cracks in a previously unshakable confidence. It is now personal testimony. Robyn describes a string of one-on-one conversations in which she learned Kody was inconsistent in what he said and did. Her voice is soft but piercing, full of frustration and pain. "He promised transparency," she says. "He promised honesty, but none of it was true." The courtroom seems to hold its breath, each word pounding against the walls of secrecy like a hammer. Christine leans forward, lips clamped shut, quietly working her way through the weight of the accusations. Janelle's hands shake just a little, but she doesn't let on how much she's emotionally jarred. The session pivots as Meri begins to outline the emotional cost of these betrayals. She describes sleepless nights, anxiety, and the heartbreak of realizing that the trust she placed in Kody and her co-wives was manipulated for agendas she was only beginning to understand. The tone shifts, veering between confrontational intensity and reflective vulnerability, making the courtroom at once electric and intimate. Christine stands, her voice now cold, unwavering. She speaks to Kody and Robyn, her words razor-sharp and incisive. "We all played a part in enabling this," she says, scanning the courtroom. But now, the truth is here, and it cannot be denied. There's accusation in her words, but also relief, a mix of satisfaction and sadness. Kody shifts uncomfortably, the tension in his shoulders a betrayal of the inner turmoil he tries to hide. Robyn wipes away tears, her body tense, but there is also a flicker of resolve forming. The judge occasionally interrupts to clarify, remind them to stick to the facts. Yet even she cannot totally diffuse the emotional storm. Witness after witness relates secret alliances, clandestine agreements, and personal betrayals that load upon the weight of crushing tension. The courtroom is electric. Every eye, every gesture, every slightest shift contributes to the charged atmosphere. As the session nears its conclusion, a powerful statement is made by Meri, voice steady and commanding. This isn't about revenge. It's about truth. And it's a truth that affects all of us, every day. The words echo in the room, digging deep into the hearts of all present. Robyn, Christine, and Janelle exchange a look. Each woman is processing the intensity of what has just been laid bare. For the first time, even Kody appears to have no comeback. The courthouse feels heavier today. Sunlight cuts sharply across the polished floors, but does little to lighten the atmosphere. The air is almost tangible, thick with tension, unspoken accusations, and anticipation. Everyone knows this session might just alter the course of the family's story forever. Kody sits rigidly, his jaw tight, his fingers drumming nervously on the polished wood of the table. The calm mask he has relied on for years is cracking, and everyone can see it. Meri, sitting opposite him, has found her stride. She sits straight-backed, her voice steady, and her eyes afire with determination. She knows the power of what she is about to reveal. The weight of truth sits heavy in her chest. Christine leans slightly forward, arms crossed, eyes narrowing as she processes every detail. Robyn's hands shake, half hidden under the table, her pale face a mask of fear, anger, and incredulity. Janelle squeezes her folder tightly, her knuckles white as she prepares silently for whatever would come next. The judge, composed but with an authoritative demeanor, points to the envelope that arrived at the end of the last session. This envelope contains evidence that could clarify a lot of the statements involved in this case. "I want complete transparency as we go through what's inside it." Her voice cuts through the thick tension like a knife, demanding attention and control, though the courtroom remains almost suffocating with emotion. Meri is the first to break the silence. "Your Honor, these documents confirm actions that were hidden from all of us," she says, sliding the papers toward the judge. "Decisions that were made without consultation, without consent, and often at the expense of trust within this family." Her voice is calm, but carries an undercurrent of anger and betrayal. Christine leans forward and peers at the documents with precision. Her sharp mind quickly pieces together a timeline of hidden alliances and unilateral decisions made by Kody. Her lips press into a thin line. A subtle smirk plays across her face, satisfaction mixed with incredulity. Robyn's eyes glisten as she reads, shock etched into her features. Janelle says nothing, her face trying to remain composed, though the anxiety shines through in her body language. Even Kody, trying to maintain his cool, cannot hide the tension coiling in his shoulder and neck. With each disclosure, the courtroom grows smaller and smaller. Every paper, every letter, every email exposes layers of deceit and manipulation. Kody wriggles in his seat, his words stuttering as he attempts to interject. Meri's eyes fix on him unflinchingly. "These are not minor oversights," she says firmly. "They are deliberate actions that have impacted each of us." Next comes a former confidant on the stand, measured in every word, each carrying the weight of truth. As he tells the story of secret meetings, decisions not disclosed, and subtle manipulations, never dreamed of by anyone outside the protected circle. The room is silent, except for the soft scratch of pen, taking notes, and the occasional shuffling of papers. It's as if the audience, imagining this, as if they were watching it, could almost feel the tension coil upwards, like a spring. About to break at any moment, Robyn stands up, abruptly, her voice trembling but firm. "I trusted him," she says, hardly above a whisper, yet her words cut through the silence like glass. "I trusted all of you, and now I realize that was wrong." Tears course down her face, but in her eyes, there's a deep glint of determination. Christine leans back, silent, watching every reaction, every flicker of emotion. Janelle's hands tighten on her folder, and she swallows hard to retain control. Kody shifts uncomfortably, his voice faltering as he tries to explain, the words awkwardly failing to convey the reassurance he hopes to give. The session grows darker as Meri begins to detail the emotional toll of Kody's unilateral actions. She recalls sleepless nights, anxiety, and the heartbreak of realizing the trust she placed in him, in the family as a whole, was compromised. The tone veers between quiet introspection and an intense confrontation, complete with cinematic tension that grips everyone in the room. Christine stands, her voice razor-sharp and controlled. "We enabled this," she says, surveying the courtroom. "Each of us, in our own way, allowed the secrecy to continue. But now the truth is unavoidable." Kody fidgets uncomfortably, his composure withering further. Robyn wipes at her tears, her body tight, still standing. Janelle's hands remain clasped on her folder, trying not to expose her inner turmoil. Though it is clear from the anguish in her posture that the weight of truth is pressing down hard, the judge breaks in, reminding them to stick to the facts. But even her commanding presence can't dispel the electric tension now filling the room. One witness after another spoke about the hidden actions, secret agreements, and emotional betrayals, adding depth to the layer upon layer of suspense and intensity. With each new testimony, Kody's defense grew weaker, his words sounding thin against the mounting weight of evidence. Meri's voice rises, firm and commanding. "This is about truth, about accountability, about the consequences of decisions made in secret," she asserts, her eyes never leaving Kody's. Robyn's tears continue to fall, her body shaking, but her words have an undeniable force. Christine leans in, passing the truth from each reaction. Janelle looks at the judge, imploring silently for closure, for resolution, for some meaningful way to make sense of the chaos surrounding her. The former confidant provides one final testimony, with moments of emotional coercion, subtle manipulation, and decisions that affected the wives in ways they were just beginning to understand. The room crackles with charged energy. The unspoken accusations, hidden truths, now finally spoken. Accusations upon accusations that slam down on Kody's already faltering defense. Robyn shakes with tears. Christine thinks silently, and Janelle clenches her fists in raw emotional angst. By the session's end, the court has absorbed a cascade of revelations, each heavier than the previous one. The judge points toward the envelope still on his desk, and signals that its contents will be front and center for the remaining sessions. Every participant in this room exchanges glances filled with apprehension, anger, and cautious hope. The tension can barely be endured. It is well known that this storm is far from over. The electricity of intensity charges the air in this courthouse today, almost palpably. Each step echoes loudly across the polished floors, bouncing off the high ceilings, magnifying the tension already thick in the air. Kody sat at the head of the table, his back straight, but his hands slightly trembling. He tries to mask inner turmoil, but every subtle movement shows his anxiety. The calm and composed behavior he has been able to maintain for years is no longer sufficient. Opposite him, Meri sits tall, sharp-eyed, her gaze unwavering. She had been preparing for this moment for years, for the chance to finally confront the hidden truths that shaped their family's story. Christine leans slightly forward, observing every reaction, calculating every detail. Robyn's hands are clenched tightly in her lap, her face pale but resolute. Janelle, ever the observer, grips her folder with knuckles, white, silent, yet bracing herself for the storm about to erupt. The judge opens the courtroom proceedings with a firm but steady voice. Today, we are going to hear the final testimonies, confessions, and review the evidence presented so far. Full cooperation is expected from all parties. There's almost a palpable pause before the proceedings get underway. It's as if everyone in the room is collectively holding their breath. Meri rises first, her voice steady, resonant, and full of purpose. Your Honor, what has been uncovered over the past sessions reveals layers of deceit, hidden agendas, and decisions made without transparency, she says, sliding a thick folder of documents toward the judge. Her voice carries the weight of years of suppressed truth, each word landing like the strike of a hammer in the hushed courtroom. Christine bends forward, scanning the documents in a jiffy. Narrowing her eyes, she can see before her the timeline of secrets, hidden alliances, and one-sided decisions long kept under wraps. Her lips set in a thin line. The hint of satisfaction with confirmation flickers briefly in her face before she masks it. Robyn's hands shake under the table, and her pale face betrays the storm of emotions that courses inside. Disbelief, hurt, and the beginnings of resolve. Janelle compresses her lips together, trying to compose herself, knowing with each revelation how much closer their family gets to a breaking point. Kody shifts uncomfortably in his seat, his once unshakable composure beginning to crumble under undeniable evidence. The first witness of the session is called forward, a one-time family confidant who has been observing and documenting the dynamics of the family for years. They get up onto the stand, their voice tentative at first, but strengthening with every utterance. They reveal forgotten conversations, secret pacts, and subtle manipulations, things that formed a family without its members ever knowing. And each word drops like a stroke of lightning, flashing open wide the cracks in relationships that had been so carefully occluded. Robyn shifts, eyes glistening with tears, while Christine's face hardens, the implications whirring in her head. Janelle's hands tighten around her folder, silently bracing for impact. Kody tries to speak, his voice defensive yet faltering. I did what I thought was best for everyone, he says, eyes darting between his wives. The words come out intended to establish control, but serve instead to reveal a rising panic. Meri is quick to give a response, calm yet incisive. Best for the family, or best for yourself. The courtroom descends into uneasy silence that is thick enough to physically feel. Robyn finally rises, her voice cracking but resolute. I trusted him, she says, tears falling openly now. I believed in what he told me, in what we were promised, and all the while, there were lies, hidden decisions that affected all of us. The courtroom seems to pause, each listener absorbing the weight of her words. Christine leans back, lips pressed together, silent yet definitely processing the impact. Janelle bites her lip, eyes wide, trying to piece together what she knew, with the painful reality before her. Kody's face tightens, and a slight quiver in his voice betrays the fear he tries to disguise. The tension shifts as Meri steps forward, delivering her testimony. Her words are precise, measured, and unwavering. She brings up financial discrepancies, secret communications, and unilateral decisions that left the wives blindsided and betrayed. Every revelation hits with a lot of impact, making the energy in the court even more palpable. This is a roller coaster between the explosive outbreaks and quiet charged introspection in tone and emotion. They introduce a new witness, a close friend of the family, who has been privy to what goes on behind closed doors. The testimony exposes long-hidden alliances, subtle manipulation, and betrayals no one had suspected. The courtroom hangs onto every word. Every reaction is magnified in the charged silence. Kody fidgets, attempting explanations, but the evidence is overwhelming. Robyn, Christine, and Janelle react in various ways. Tears, a clenched fist, sharp, deliberate glances, all which emphasize raw emotion. The judge periodically interjects to ask for clarity, reminding them to focus on the facts. But even her commanding presence cannot diffuse the electric tension in the room. Each revelation piles upon the last, constructing a towering narrative of betrayal, secrecy, and emotional devastation. Kody's attempts to control the narrative are for naught as the evidence and testimonies coalesce into an undeniable truth. Meri rises once more, her voice commanding and resolute. This is not about revenge, she says. It is about truth, accountability, and the consequences of decisions made in secret. Robyn, though sobbing, steps beside her, nodding in agreement. Christine observes silently, the calculating mind behind her calm exterior, noting every reaction, every nuance. Janelle's hand shakes slightly as she clutches her folder, her body tense but alert. Finally, the envelope the judge had been clutching is opened. Photographs, emails, messages, confirming decades of secret dealings and betrayals. The room is overcome with a mix of disbelief, shock, and horror. Kody's face goes white, his hands grasping at the edge of the table. Robyn gasps, quickly covering her mouth. As Christine leans in closer, her eyes scanning each document with hawk-like precision. Janelle stares wide-eyed, the magnitude of what she sees weighing down like a physical weight. Robyn steps forward, her voice now steadier, as she reads aloud a confession contained in the documents. It implicates Kody directly, showing layers of manipulation and hidden decisions that have impacted every member of the family. The courtroom is silent, except for the sound of her voice, a voice that carries both pain and resolve. Meri glances up with a glint in her eye, triumph tempered by sorrow at what's been revealed. Christine leans back, expression unreadable, while Janelle's hands relax slightly as she absorbs the full truth. The tension reaches its height. Kody finally speaks, voice faltering, eyes downcast. "I thought I was doing what was best." His words trail off, swallowed by the weight of undeniable evidence. It is dead silent in the courtroom. All the people present in it are caught in the gravity of the moment,